Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, I guess I should say as well, to those friends of ours that may be joining us on the left coast out in Mountain Time Zone, West Coast time. It is straight up noon here Central Time where I'm located in Minneapolis. My name is Scott Clayson. I'm the marketing director here at TimeSolv, and this is our Wednesday webinar. It is the second Wednesday of the month. And this is when we always get together to share the tips and tricks to get the most out of your TimeSolv subscription. I am going to wait another minute or so for everyone to join in. So I'll let you all who have joined give you about another minute to grab that extra glass of water, get the food out of the microwave, whatever the case may be. So I'll be jumping back in here in about a minute or so. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Again, for those that are just joining us, welcome to TimeSolv Wednesday webinar. I'm Scott Clayson, and this is the time that we spend every month for TimeSolv users to see either new features that we've rolled out in the previous month, and to also see features or things within TimeSolv you may not have been aware of. You may have learned it when you initially came on board with TimeSolv or were trained with TimeSolv, but features in software is kind of like, muscle. If you don't use it, you'll lose it. And if you don't use a feature all the time, you aren't going to remember that it necessarily exists or where it exists. So that's the type of things that we'll cover today. Most of you should also receive our tip of the weeks every Monday, roughly. It's almost every Monday. We do send out a tip of the week to all administrators and owners of TimeSolv accounts with the same pieces of information that we'll be covering here in this webinar. So really this webinar is just a recap of the previous month's tips that we've sent out. So generally we like to cover around 4 topics each month. So that being said, a couple of housekeeping items. I know I have a full hour booked out for the webinar. Historically speaking, I would say I rarely run past 45 minutes. So we should definitely be making sure that we end on time. Everyone is on mute. If you have any questions during the course of the presentation today, you should see a Q&A or a chat area as well, where you can ask questions. And as always, those of you who have joined many times in the past know I always like to say, please, I will ask you to refrain from asking the questions till we get near the end, because you may find that I answer your question during the course of what I'm reviewing. And if there is, I always promise, if there is a question I cannot answer, then I will find out the answer from our support team and email that out to people after the webinar. And we are recording this webinar, and I send out a link as well. Plus we do post these on our YouTube channel, so you can review them at your leisure. So that being said, I think I said that being said like 3 times now. I better quit with that phrase here for the day. Let's get started and talk about the topics that we'll be discussing today. A couple of these are new features. The first 3, I believe, are, and then the last one is just a review of an existing feature. So we made a change recently in how you can treat the task and expense codes if you use that when making time entries and expense entries. And I'll review that in further detail. We also made a change in the way that you can edit the invoice date on draft invoices before you send them out. And I'll show you that. I think it's a nice new feature that is going to be very helpful. Then we also added a couple of new search functionalities, both for time entries and when you're searching for clients and matters, to allow you to hopefully find the clients and matters that you're looking for a little easier. And then the last topic, for those that I'm assuming most people now do these days, send out their invoices via email. I will make sure that you are aware of, for people that you're sending your invoices to, if more than one person needs to receive the invoice, I'll show you how you can add additional emails, as well as how you can change and edit the message that's in the body of the email. And I added this topic. I had a conversation with a longtime customer of ours. They've been using us for close to 10 years last week, and they were unaware that you could send emails to the clients directly from TimeSolv. They were downloading their invoices, turning them from drafts into sent, and then had them as PDFs on their computer, and then we're emailing them to their clients from there. So I always, again, this is the whole reason why we do these Wednesday webinars is to remind even longtime users that there are some fundamental features within TimeSolv that you may not be aware of. Okay, so let's get right to it and talk about the type of entries you can create depending on the task and expense codes. I'm going to get right into it here. And I'm going to log into my screen. I'm assuming everyone can see my screen. I made sure to share it. I still like to, and again, longtime people who have been on these webinars know there was a horror story, might have been about 8 or 9 months ago, where I forgot to share my screen for this webinar for the first 20 minutes. And it was a disaster in the making. Probably the best 20 minutes of a webinar I've ever done. So you should see I'm signed into my account here. And what we're going to talk about today is, first I want to show you this whole idea about the task and expense codes and what you can do with them wraps around determining the billable type for the time entry. Now in my account here, you can see as I make a time entry, I can choose, there's 3 types of entries that you can make: billable, non-billable, no charge. And it's pretty self-explanatory, but just to review, obviously a billable time entry is going to appear on the invoice with the amount that you're charging, and it'll be part of the invoice. Non-billable entry is a time entry that you make that will not appear on the invoice at all, but you internally can track the work that was done for that client and matter. It just may be non-billable work. And a no-charge entry, of course, is a time entry that you make that will appear on the invoice, but will clearly show that it's a no charge. So the client sees you did the work, but you're not charging for it. Now, this is not by default available for every timekeeper, even administrators. You have to turn this on. So before we get into the expense code, task code thing, let me show you where you can do that if need be. So under Account and Professionals, I'm going to click on my own dummy name here, Scott Laidlaw, and under Permissions here, that Permissions tab, under the Time area section here, you can see that you have this availability to turn on, can this person update the billable type? By default, that is turned off for everybody, for the obvious reasons that most firms are not going to be comfortable having their rank and file timekeepers. You don't want to give them necessarily the ability to determine if a time entry is going to be billable, non-billable, or no charge. So for example, if this Tony Hill here, who's just kind of, again, a rank and file timekeeper, under the permissions for Tony, this is unchecked now for him. I unchecked mine, so we can just go back to my time entry screen, and you'll see that I no longer have that billable type here. However, we heard from some firms, and these were actually some larger firms, that said, yeah, but we don't want our timekeepers to be able to determine whether an entry is billable, non-billable, or no charge. However, there is some work that they do, a blend of work, that we don't want to have to go back and edit a time entry after the fact, that's too much work. Can we do something in leveraging the task codes, or in the case of expenses, expense codes? And it's like, yeah, that makes perfect sense. So now we've introduced the ability to have you determine if a task code is going to be a billable, non-billable, or no charge. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and turn back on that feature so you can see how it works, visually here. So I'm going to turn that back on. What we're going to do is we're going to go under our time and settings to access our task codes. And you go again, time settings, and you have the task codes tab here. I use TimeSolv Legal, so obviously I have all the built-in ABA task codes, but again, as a refresher, you can always create your own custom task codes if needed. And here's some that I've created here. But let's say that this B120, asset analysis and recovery, you've determined that this is going to be a no charge, but whatever the case may be, as a task code. So you want to click on the actual, the link over here under the code itself. And you'll see now in this field where you can edit things that you have a new field called billable type. And you can say, this is going to be a non-billable task code. So now that timekeeper, if I were to choose that specific task code, oops, I don't even need it. Let me just create asset analysis and recovery. First of all, let's notice right now by default, it's showing billable type as billable. If I choose that task code, asset analysis and recovery, it's now changed to non-billable. Now, of course, if your timekeepers don't see this, they won't see any of this happening in the background. But more importantly, when invoices are being created, and if you know that there are certain specific task codes you want to use as a billable or no charge, non-billable or no charge, that will then be reflected either on the invoice or when you're running reports and you want to see the non-billable work, whatever the case may be. So this is the whole takeaway here. This is a great way to leverage the ability for time entries to be one of these three types without the timekeeper themselves being the ones who determine that. It'll be determined by the task codes. And again, based on the permissions, your timekeepers also will now not have any access to edit these task codes. So they'll never be able to come in here and change it themselves. Same way they can't go in and change the billable type on a time entry, but you can do it in the background. So I hope that's clear for everyone. I think it's a nice new feature for those that need to have their timekeepers do different types of time entries, but not have them actually manipulate what happens within those. So, okay, let's get on to our next topic. Changing the invoice date before sending. I think this is a really nice new feature that was just rolled out. And what's happening here is, let me go over to my draft invoice screen, and let me just create a whole bunch of new draft invoices. So I'm just going to do open. I probably will be creating a whole bunch here. I haven't actually built out of my demo account here in a while, so we'll see 40 invoices processed. That's good. It's good to actually have probably a fair amount. And notice I already have the invoice date. By default, the invoice date came up with today. And again, that's another reminder. I'll come back to this draft invoice screen again. Just a reminder that the invoice date by default can be changed to whatever you want it to be, because we know that you're not necessarily going to be sending your invoices the same day you create the drafts, and you want to have a specific invoice date. You can always change that here, and that will appear for all of the drafts that you create. In this case, it's today. Now, previously, if you wanted to change the date for an invoice, you had to do it one at a time. And by doing that, you would click on the actual dollar amount, because there's a reminder, again, this is where you can do all sorts of edits to your drafts. You can click on a specific invoice and change the invoice date, but that becomes very laborious if you have a whole bunch of invoices that you want to change the date to a different date. You don't want to have to come in here one at a time. So all you have to do now is either select all your drafts or just whatever drafts you're going to send on a specific day. And either way, you can see it's activated everything up here in the right-hand corner. Let's watch that again. Notice how everything is grayed out here, including sending, voiding, downloading, everything, until you actually select the invoices. In this case, I'm just going to select all. But now we have a new option here beyond downloading, sending, and voiding. That is to mass change the invoice date. So I can come in here, say, I know I'm going to send these out on the 17th for sure, hit save. And you're going to see that all the dates now have changed to December 17th. So it's a nice new feature to essentially mass update the invoice date all at once and not have to go into each individual invoice if needed. Again, I think a really nice new feature to allow you to customize that invoice date in a quick way for everybody in a batch fashion. So that one was easy and quick to show you. Okay. Let's talk about item number 3 here. Some new search functionality that we put into place. And one of them is super logical. And it's like, yeah, I could see how that could be a big issue. And this is an issue for firms that have many timekeepers, or, well, I would say, let's just, you could see more than 2. For a solo attorney, it's not really as applicable. So what am I talking about? The first new search function that we enhanced was in the time entry search field. Before I do that, I'm going to take a time entry. Well, first of all, let me void out all these drafts because that's taking all of my time entries and putting them on a draft, so I can't do any edits on them. And I want to be able to edit some time entries. Okay, so those are all deleted, those drafts. I'm gonna go back to my time entry screen. And I'm in November here, and I'm gonna click on here, let's say, and I'm gonna start this timer again. So again, it's a nice reminder. If you need to add more time, you can click on it and just start the timer here, and it starts to run in the upper corner. This was a new feature, of course, that we added just a couple of months ago, that no matter where you are in TimeSolv, if you have a timer running, you can see that you have one running in the upper portion of your screen here. And when you hover over the time itself, it's going to pop out and tell you exactly what the details are for the entry you're running a timer for. Well, that's great for you, by yourself. But what happens when you're in a multiple firm? And let's log in as Tony Hill, my other timekeeper. Oh, I have many in my account, but I'm just going to log in as another one. So Tony Hill here, he's running his timer, and he's got it running in his screen up here. Yeah, that's fantastic. And now he, logs out for the day. He forgets to turn his timer off. He forgets to stop it. We're all human. It happens a lot. Not completely unusual. So now the problem is when you go to create draft invoices, it's not going to grab that time entry because there's a timer running. And as me as the administrator, yeah, I can see my timer running, but I can't see if Tony Hill has a timer running until now. We changed the search functionality to allow you to go under time and search. And when have your search criteria here, come on over here to where it says more options. Click on that. Now you have a new field here, timer search. And you can search by show me any running timers by any professional. I hit search. Now you can see I have a couple of times. I had one for Mike Hegman, which I didn't even know. Okay. So I have 3 timers that are all running for 3 different professionals. And as the administrator, I can stop all of them right from this screen here. So a great way when it's coming time to shut down a month and do the billing to double check that there's no running timers that people have out there that they may not be aware of or they forgot about, whatever the case may be. You now can search for specifically, show me all the running timers. And then you can have the discussion about it. Obviously, they're probably gonna need to update it if the timers have been running for longer than they were doing the work for. But I think this is a great way to, find those loopholes and make sure that all your time entries are closed out when they should be closed out and so on. So that's the first new search functionality that we enhanced, like I said, a couple of weeks ago. The other area where we improved our search functionality is under clients and matters. We now allow you to search in 3 new ways. And before I get into them, well, I'll talk about them and I'll show you how you can manipulate them. First is if you've set up billing categories. And the other is if you have set up, we have a category field and a subcategory field that for my account, I've renamed as type of matters and location. So let's kind of back up a second and like, well, how do I work with these various categories? That would come under clients and settings. And when you're under clients and settings, you have this, the row of tabs of all the various things that you can set up here, including our category tab. You have the ability in TimeSolv to create essentially 2 different categories. And you can have labels within them. Types of matters is what I set up. I think by default it says category and subcategory is what the default labels are, but you can change these labels to be customized, obviously. In this case, I said, I want a category for showing me the types of matters, estate law, family law, real estate law, and so on. And location. Maybe you have location of your clients. You want to designate if they're in-state, out-of-state, whatever. You can make this whatever you want to make this that is important for your firm. Then once you're actually looking at your clients and matters, when you're looking at a client here, right here are those categories under the general tab, type of matters, and you can choose location. You can choose. I think it's also in the matters as well. Yeah, it is here, type of matter. So both under client and under matter, you can designate these categories, just to kind of keep things organized. Same thing, and this is one that we rolled out earlier this year, I think in February or March, and that is billing categories. And this is a great tool when it comes to running invoices for those non-traditional monthly on-demand time and billing invoices. This is a great tool to leverage if you have clients that you send out invoices irregularly or just not monthly at least. In other words, you can create different categories. Some, I know some larger firms call them and some tools call them billing queues, if you will. But you can create, we call them billing categories, and I've created ones, for those that I do annual billing for, maybe contingency billing matters, monthly, just regular monthly billing matter, or quarterly billing. A lot of people will bill quarterly. And then the idea is that when you're looking at a client and matter, you can designate in the invoice settings the billing category, and they can have more than one. But then the nice thing is when you're creating your draft invoices, you can, hey, it's, January 1 is rolling around the corner, and the first week of January, I need to generate all the invoices for those people we only bill quarterly. I got to do Q4 of 2019. Well, when you're creating draft invoices, then you don't need to remember, okay, which of my 5,500, whatever clients do I only bill quarterly? You don't have to remember. You can come in here and run draft invoice and say, only run invoices for those people that have the billing category of monthly or quarterly or annually or whatever the case may be. So show me only the quarterly billing clients and create those draft invoices. So it's only going to create invoices for those clients and matters that have this category designated for them. If you're not taking advantage of this feature and you have multiple type of billing timelines for your clients, it's a great way to organize it when you're actually creating those invoices. And now, this is a long-winded way of getting back to the search functionality. Now you can search for those clients and matters by the billing categories you have set up, by the types of matter categories you may have set up, or the other categories that you may have set up. So you can kind of filter this in a very precise way, like show me only quarterly billing people who I'm doing estate law for, and obviously I don't have anybody designated like that, but that you understand the point. I have 3 matters that I've designated as my quarterly billing matters, and you can view those. You could say, show me I don't think I've done much of this in my dummy account, so this isn't going to show anything, but show me all the matters I've designated as just estate, type law. So this is a great way of being able to see visually, organizing, especially for your professionals who, hey, they only work on estate law. They don't work on any other family law or real estate law or whatever the case may be. They can just search for the matters there. So again, it's just a better filtering mechanism when trying to find clients and matters that all have the same characteristics. And again, a refresher here too, that you can always have, by default, we show you your active clients and matters, but you can mark clients and matters as inactive. You can also, if you don't have this in place yet, this is a place where you can keep prospective clients and matters and house information about them in case they do become an active client. So part of your intake would be perhaps creating a client and matter and just naming them as prospect. That's an option for you. Okay, so that's the search functionality that has come just in the recent weeks. The time search by running timers and searching by either the billing category you may have set up or the other customized categories that we have available for you as well. Okay, so let's talk about our last topic for the day. Additional emails for invoices and the email narrative. And as I mentioned at the top, I was a little surprised that one of our longtime clients, customers, wasn't aware of the leverage that you have within TimeSolv to send your invoices to your clients via email. If you haven't taken advantage of that, it's obviously, we encourage everybody to do that. And a couple places where you can kind of set everything up for that if you're not aware of it. So first, we're going to come back to our clients and settings. And under the invoice settings, first of all, you have the default invoice delivery. And if you want to send them via email, you would check this email box right here. Printer, as you know, it's just downloading it essentially as a PDF or whatever format you designate, to your computer for printing or emailing or whatever you want to do. But if you want to email it directly to your clients, make sure this box is checked and make sure you have the right format that you would like to send the invoice to your clients, because the emails will go to your clients as just a regular standalone email with an attachment, and the attachment is going to be their invoice. I'm assuming a lot of people already use this feature, but just in case you don't, there it is. But more importantly, down here under the invoice narratives section, this is where you can put in your standard email message. What do you want to be in the body of the email? Thanks for your business. Please find the attached invoice. If you have any questions, so on. If you don't have the client portal set up to receive LawPay payments, if you use LawPay through TimeSolv and you want them to pay via credit card, or maybe they pay you via PayPal, whatever the case may be, you can put those instructions right in this email. This will turn into a hyperlink in the email if you have the HTTP, ://. If you have the URL where you want to send people to make a payment, include it in this email body message. Very simple. And then, I just have some standard, information here. If you have any questions, please contact Julie, whatever the case may be. This is the then stock email message that will go out. Now, a lot of people might want to customize that, obviously. And you can do that under the clients and matters. And this is also where I'll show you where you can do the additional emails. So if you want to customize the body of the email message, you can click on a particular client here, go under invoice settings, and you're going to see invoice narratives here. Here is the standard email message. Thank you for your business. Please find the blah, blah, blah. If you want to customize it, click on edit the narratives for this client. Now you can customize this for just this client, for just Aretha. If you want to do it at a specific matter level, you have multiple matters and you want to customize it at the matter level, same thing. Click on it, go to invoice settings, go to edit narratives, same thing. You can edit this. The last option you have for editing the message in the body of the email is when you're actually at the specific draft level. So I'll just do, I guess it's going to create all, whatever, 60 some again. Maybe I shouldn't have avoided those all back to draft, but this won't take very long. It's TimeSolv after all. We generate invoices quickly. So when the one last option for editing the body of the email, I click on the amount here to get into my edits. I go to my narratives, and there it is again, the invoice email message. Okay, so you got that part taken care of. What about additional emails that you got to send to people? So you may have a client that tells you, don't send the invoice to me, send it to my bookkeeper, but I want to be copied on it so I know that she received the invoice from you all. Well, how do you do that exactly? What you would do is if you go to a particular client, let's say it's, I'm trying to find what that might have. So Bob Smith. And Bob Smith is in here as the main contact. This is a good one. Actually, I have Darwin Quintero. He's in here as the main contact for this client, Bob Smith. However, I've designated Mason Toye to receive the optional invoiced contact type here, meaning Mason's going to get the invoice when you email it to him, not Darwin. But Darwin tells you, hey, look, Mason's my accountant. I want you to send the invoice to him, but I want to be copied on it. Well, how do you do that? And where you do that is in the invoice settings here. In the invoice delivery, you'll see a box under printer and email. Again, you can customize this at whether you want to do printer, email, whatever. Here's an additional emails field. Type in that Darwin Quintero's email address. Just to be quite simple, Darwin at, bobsmith.com. He would now, and then you would hit save, and that would go ahead and send him the invoice. He would get CC'd on it, essentially. Here's another little trick with this as well, because a lot of people have asked us, well, who is the email, who gets CC'd from my, at the firm level? I want to make sure that the invoice is being sent, I get CC'd on it. Well, who gets CC'd from me as the, you're the law firm, who sees a copy of that email going out? Well, the copy of the email is going to be sent out to whoever is the main account holder, the firm owner is going to be CC'd on any emails that you send out. You go under, hang on, you go under our account. I'm going to leave this here. And we want to make, it's going to be this email address, okay, is going to be who it's going to be emailed to if under your settings, and I know we've changed this around, I believe you have to set it somewhere, and I can't remember now for CCing the emails, the invoice emails. I'm wading into a hole I hadn't looked into in a while. The point is, if you do want to make sure that an email goes to somebody other than this main owner here, okay? If you want to make sure that that happens, add them as an additional, somebody else at your firm, add them as the additional, maybe it's under invoice settings. I'm just now getting stuck. Yes, here we go. Copy invoice emails to the sender. This check box is checked here under invoice settings. Well, the sender is going to be whoever the main account holder is. If you want it to be somebody else within your own firm, add them as the additional email too. So for Bob Smith here, and you go to invoice settings and you go to additional emails, Darwin wants to get it at bobsmith.com. Then if I want to add somebody else, comma, space, and then I want to get it too. If I need to have a third person, comma, space, put in the next email that you'd like to have receive the email and the invoice. It can be external, internal, it can be anybody, it doesn't matter. But this is where you would send the additional emails to people beyond whoever the designated contact is. In this case, it's Mason, because they have the optional invoice type set for them. So I hope that makes sense to everybody. So leverage that, the ability to deliver your invoices through TimeSolv and not, have to download the invoices to your computer, then send out the invoices one at a time via email. Now, I know people say they want to customize them and so on. Well, that's where you can leverage, if you want to customize them even by the specific invoice, again, you can do it here at the draft level and you can customize that email message. But then the point is when you're ready to send them all, you're just checking the box, sending, and they're all going to be, if they have this in this column that they're going to receive the invoice via email, that's how they're going to get it. And then whoever you've added to additional emails will be CC'd on it, along with the main account holder for TimeSolv. Okay. That's all I got for today. We kind of blew through that somewhat quickly, I think, because a couple of those items were fast to cover. Any questions right now as we look to wrap this up? I'll provide awkward silence for people to think and type in a question. Well, I don't see any questions coming in. Nothing is in the chat as well. So that tells me that I guess I must have covered everything well enough. Okay, well, I'm not going to take up any more of your time then. Like I mentioned previously at the top, I will send out a recording, a link to the recording of this webinar so that you can review at your leisure. And we will also have it on our YouTube page by the end of the week, I believe. So let's all mark our calendars for our first session of 2020. I can't believe I'm even saying that it's 2020. We will be doing our next Wednesday webinar on Wednesday, January 8th in 2020. So if I don't hear from you all between now and then, I want to wish you a very Merry Christmas, Happy Holiday season, Happy New Year, all of those, the good tidings for this season. Remain safe and happy and healthy with your family. And we will talk to everybody in January. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of the week.